There are moments in life that split everything into before and after. Most people think those moments are loud. An accident, a phone call, a door slamming, something that announces itself. But the moment that split my life, the second time, the one I didn't see coming, was quiet. It was a Tuesday morning in October. I was sitting on my back porch in Asheville, North Carolina, drinking coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago because I kept forgetting to drink it. That had become a habit since Claire died. Making coffee, forgetting it, pouring it out, making more. 6 months of cold coffee. And then I heard a car pull into my driveway. I didn't move. I'd gotten good at not moving. Grief does that, it makes stillness feel like the only safe option. But then I heard footsteps on the porch, and a knock on the side gate, and a voice I hadn't heard in almost 2 years. Nathan? I turned around, and there was Diane, Claire's younger sister. Same dark eyes, same way of standing like she was bracing for something. Older than I remembered, or maybe just tired in a way I recognized because I saw it in the mirror every morning. She had a box under one arm and an envelope in her hand and an expression on her face that I had absolutely no framework for. I know I should have called, she said. I'm sorry, I needed to do this in person. Do what? I asked. She looked at the envelope. Then at me. My sister has died, she said. And I heard the crack in it, the way those words still cost her something to say out loud. But I came to pay her debt. I stared at her. Her debt, I repeated. Yes. Claire didn't have any debts. Diane looked at me with those eyes that were so much like her sister's it was almost unbearable. She had one, she said quietly. She had one she never got around to paying. And she made me promise. And hey, if you're enjoying this already, like and subscribe. It actually helps more than you think. Now, back to the story, let me tell you about Claire. Claire Briggs, Claire Calloway before she married me 22 years ago, was the kind of woman who remembered everything. Birthdays, anniversaries, the name of your childhood dog that you mentioned once in 2009. She kept a paper calendar even after everyone moved to phones because she said screens made things feel temporary. She was 51 when she died, ovarian cancer. 14 months from diagnosis to the end, which sounds like a long time until you're living it and realize it goes faster than anything you've ever experienced. One day you're sitting in a doctor's office being told statistics, and then you blink and you're standing in a cemetery in April watching them lower the woman you built your entire life around into the ground. I was 53, retired early from 30 years in civil engineering. We had a house in Asheville we'd picked together specifically because of the back porch and the mountain view. We had plans, travel, grandchildren eventually, the slow good life that you spend decades working toward. And then we didn't. After Claire died, people came. Of course they came. Friends, neighbors, colleagues, her book club, my brother from Portland. They brought casseroles and they sat with me and they said the things people say, and I received all of it with as much grace as I could manage. But Diane didn't come. I noticed I didn't say anything because grief isn't a competition, and everyone handles loss differently, and Diane lived in Savannah and had her own life and her own relationship with losing her sister. But I noticed, and then 6 months passed, and now here she was, standing at my gate with a box and an envelope and a sentence that didn't make any sense. I brought her inside. That felt important, not leaving her at the gate, not having this conversation on the porch. I brought her inside and I made fresh coffee. Actually fresh, the first time in weeks I'd made it with any intention of drinking it. And we sat at the kitchen table that still had Claire's reading glasses on it because I hadn't moved them. Diane saw the glasses. She didn't say anything, just looked at them for a moment and then looked at her hands. I should have come sooner, she said. You're here now, I said. That's generous of you. It's just true. She wrapped both hands around the coffee mug. I couldn't, after the funeral, I couldn't come back here, to this house. Because Claire loved this house so much and I knew it would. She stopped. I'm sorry, Nathan. I know that's not an excuse. It doesn't need to be an excuse, I said. She was your sister. Diane nodded, looked at the envelope on the table between us. She gave me this, she said, about 3 weeks before she passed. She made me promise to deliver it in person, not mail it, not email it, in person to your hands. She paused. She also made me promise to wait 6 months. I looked at the envelope. 6 months, I said. She was specific about it. She said, she said you'd need the 6 months first, that if I came too soon it wouldn't land right. She almost smiled. That was Claire. Timing everything. My chest did something complicated. What's in it? I asked. I don't know, Diane said. I genuinely don't. She sealed it herself. Whatever's in there, she didn't tell me. She slid the envelope across the table. But she told me about the debt. That part she explained. Tell me the debt part first, I said, because I wasn't ready for the envelope yet. I could feel that much. Okay, Diane said. And she started to talk. 23 years ago, before I met Claire, before any of this, Diane had a crisis. She was 26, freshly divorced from a man she should never have married, broke in the specific way that young people are broke when they've made decisions that cost them everything at once. She had a daughter, Maya, 4 years old, and no job and nowhere to go. Their parents were gone by then. There was no safety net. Claire was the safety net. Claire had just started a new job in Charlotte. She was 28, just barely stable herself, living in a one-bedroom apartment and sending a third of her paycheck home to help with their mother's medical bills, which had outlasted their mother by 18 months. And Diane called her, and Claire, without hesitation, without condition, without making Diane feel small for asking, said, "Come." Diane and Maya moved into Claire's one-bedroom apartment in Charlotte. Diane slept on the couch. Maya slept in the bedroom with Claire. They lived like that for 14 months, while Diane got back on her feet, found a job, found an apartment, rebuilt herself from the ground up. Claire never once made her feel like a burden. She also never let Diane pay her back. Every time Diane tried, and she tried many times over the years, in many forms, Claire refused. She'd say it wasn't a loan, it was just what you do for family. There's nothing to pay back. But Diane never stopped feeling the weight of it. When she got sick, Diane said, I told her again. I said, Claire, let me do something. Let me pay you back somehow. And she laughed at me. You know how she laughed. I know, I said. She said, fine. She said there was one thing, one way I could pay her back. Diane looked at me steadily. She said, take care of Nathan. Not immediately, not in any way that isn't right. But she said, check on him, be his family. Because she was worried about you being alone, and she knew you'd never ask anyone for anything, and she knew you'd just sit in that house and disappear quietly into yourself. She paused. Her words, not mine. I sat with that for a moment. Disappear quietly into yourself. 22 years this woman knew me. She also, Diane continued more carefully, said something else. She said, Diane, if you walk into that house and Nathan Briggs has forgotten how to live, I need you to remind him. However long that takes. The kitchen was very quiet. I looked at Claire's reading glasses on the table. She planned this, I said, not angry, just recognizing her. This was so completely her. She planned everything, Diane said, and her voice broke slightly on the last word. Right up until the end, she was planning. Taking care of everyone, making sure everything was handled. She wiped her eye quickly, efficiently, like she'd made a decision not to cry and was renegotiating. I don't know how she did it. I would have been, I would have fallen apart. She just kept organizing, like love was a logistics problem she could solve. I laughed, small and real from somewhere I hadn't accessed in 6 months. That's exactly what she did, I said. Diane looked at me when I laughed. Something shifted in her expression, not quite relief, more like recognition. She said you'd still laugh, Diane said softly. She said even at the end you'd still find the thing that was funny. She said that was one of her favorite things about you. I looked at the envelope. I'll read it now, I said. The letter was 3 pages. Claire's handwriting, small and precise, the kind of handwriting that meant something in an era when nobody wrote anything by hand anymore. I'm not going to read you the whole letter. Some things belong only to the people they were written for. But I'll tell you what it said in the way it mattered. She knew she was dying 6 months before she told me. She'd gotten the diagnosis, gone home, sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee, her coffee which she always drank hot, and made a decision. She was going to handle the practical things first before she told me, because she knew that once she told me I would spend every remaining moment trying to fix it. And she didn't want our last months together to be about fixing. She wanted them to be about living. So she spent 2 months quietly putting everything in order. The finances, the house, the arrangements, before she sat me down and told me. I'd always thought she'd told me immediately. I'd always thought we faced it together from the start. We didn't. She carried 2 months of it alone so that I wouldn't have to. The letter said, I know you might be angry about this. You're allowed to be angry, but I need you to understand that those 2 months weren't about keeping secrets. They were about protecting the time we had left. I wanted our last year to be ours, not the cancer's. I hope I got that right. She got it right. She always got it right. The last paragraph said, Nathan, you are the best thing that ever found me. And I mean found. Because neither of us was looking when we walked into that terrible party in Charlotte in 1999, and you spilled red wine on my white shirt and then spent 20 minutes apologizing. You were always like that. More sorry than you needed to be and more good than you knew. I need you to keep living. Not for me. I'll be fine. I'm not worried about me. For you. Because you deserve the rest of the story. Please don't close the book. I folded the letter, put it on the table, looked out the window at the back porch, the mountain view, the two chairs we'd put there specifically so we could sit together in the mornings. Diane didn't say anything. She just sat there, present, not trying to fix it. After a long time, I said, "She spilled the wine, actually. She's remembering it wrong." Diane stared at me. "She always told that story like it was me," I said. "It was her. She knocked my elbow. I've been taking the blame for 22 years because she thought it was funnier that way." Diane burst out laughing, loud and sudden in the quiet kitchen, the kind of laugh that surprises you by how good it feels. And I laughed with her, and it felt like something cracking open that needed to crack open. Diane didn't leave that day. She'd booked a hotel in town. She showed me the reservation, 2 nights. She'd planned to deliver the letter and spend a day making sure I was okay and then drive back to Savannah. Practical, measured, very Clare influenced. But that evening I asked if she wanted to see the back porch at sunset because Claire had always said the back porch at sunset was the reason they bought the house. And Diane said yes. We sat in the two chairs. We watched the sun go down over the mountains. She told me about Maya, who was now 27, living in Atlanta, getting married next spring. She told me about Savannah, her job teaching fourth grade, the neighborhood she'd lived in for 11 years. She told me small things, easy things, the kind of conversation that fills space without demanding anything. And then, because it was getting dark and neither of us had moved, I ordered pizza. She stayed for dinner. And then it was 9 p.m. and she said she should get to the hotel and I said I'd walk her to her car, and somehow on the way to the car we ended up standing in the driveway talking for another 40 minutes about nothing in particular. She left at 9:47 p.m. I went inside and the house felt not less empty, but differently empty, like it had held a person in it for a few hours and hadn't forgotten yet. I slept better that night than I had in 6 months. She came back the next morning. She said she'd thought about the back porch and wanted to see it in the morning too. I said okay. I made coffee hot this time, intentional, and we sat on the porch and watched the mountains do what mountains do in the morning, which is just be enormous and indifferent, and somehow comforting. She talked about this porch constantly, Diane said. Every time I talked to her in the last few years. The porch, the view, the coffee in the morning. She said it was the closest thing to peace she'd found that didn't require anything of her. "We used to sit out here every morning," I said. "Never missed it. Even in winter, we'd bundle up. She'd take 30 minutes to get ready, but she always made it out here." That sounds like her. "She'd bring her calendar," I said. "Even on weekends, she'd sit there with her calendar and her coffee and plan the week. I used to tease her about it." I paused. I'd give a lot to tease her about it one more time. Diane was quiet. "Grief is strange," she said after a moment. "People told me it gets easier, and I think what they mean is it gets different. The shape of it changes. But I'm not sure easier is the right word." "No," I said. "It's not the right word." We sat with that. "How are you, Nathan?" Actually, nobody had asked me that in a while. They asked how I was doing, which is a different question. A question that wants a manageable answer. "How are you?" actually wanted the truth. "Some days are okay," I said honestly. "Some days I make coffee and forget to drink it, and that's the whole day. Some days I go for a walk and I'm fine until I see something she would have loved, and then I'm not fine." I looked at the mountains. "I'm still here, though. That counts for something, I think." "It counts for a lot," Diane said. She left that afternoon, but before she got in the car, she turned around and said, "I'm going to call next week, just to check in. Is that okay?" "That's okay," I said. "And maybe I'll come back sometime, if that's not." "Diane," I looked at her, "your family. You don't have to ask." She nodded. Something moved across her face that she didn't let become anything. She got in the car, she called the next week, and the week after that. Here is what happens, slowly, when someone keeps calling. You start to expect the call. You notice when it's Tuesday, because Tuesday became the day, and something in you orients toward it without you deciding to. You find yourself noting things during the week. A funny thing that happened, something you read, a bird that landed on the porch railing and stayed for an hour, and filing them away because you know you'll tell her on Tuesday. You start living in a way that has someone to report back to, which is, I realized one Tuesday in January, the closest thing to alive I'd felt since April. She came back in December. Just for a weekend, Maya was driving through Asheville and Diane rode with her and they both came for dinner on Saturday. Maya was warm and funny and had Claire's eyes at a remove, the family resemblance one generation diluted, and she called me Uncle Nathan, which I hadn't been called in years. I made my mother's pot roast. First time I'd cooked a real meal since Claire died. We sat around the table for 3 hours. When they left that night and I closed the door and stood in my kitchen that smelled like a real dinner, I thought, please don't close the book. It was February when Diane called on a Monday instead of Tuesday. I noticed immediately. "You're a day early," I said. "I know," she said. "I need to tell you something, and I've been trying to figure out how to say it for about 3 weeks, and I've decided I'm just going to say it." I sat down. "Okay," I said. "There's a second letter," she said. Silence. "A second letter?" I repeated. "Claire gave me 2 envelopes. She told me to give you the first one at 6 months. She made me promise to give you the second one only if." She stopped, started again. "Only if I thought you were ready, and only if." Another stop. "Diane. Only if things had developed in a way that she thought they might." Her voice was careful, steady. She was very specific. She said, "Diane, I know you, and I know Nathan, and I'm asking you to do something that might feel strange, and I need you to trust me." My heart was doing something I didn't have a name for. "She planned this too," I said, not a question. "She planned this too. The Tuesday calls. She suggested Tuesday, yes. She said it was a good day for it. Coming back in December. She said December was important. She said." Diane's voice softened. "She said she didn't want you spending the holidays alone, and she knew you'd never ask anyone to come, and so she was going to arrange it so someone had a reason to." I sat in my kitchen in February and thought about my wife, my brilliant, organized, impossibly loving wife, sitting in the same kitchen 3 weeks before she died, writing letters and making plans and taking care of everyone, including the 2 people she was leaving behind. "What does the second letter say?" I asked. "I don't know," Diane said. "I haven't opened it. I wouldn't. But Nathan." She paused. "Before I tell you whether to expect it, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest with me." "Ask," I said. "These last few months," she said carefully. "The calls, the visits. December, has any of it felt like? Have you felt anything that surprised you?" "I'm not asking you to say anything that isn't true. I'm asking because before I do what Claire asked me to do, I need to know if I'm doing it because she asked or because it's." She couldn't finish the sentence. The kitchen was very quiet. I thought about Tuesday mornings, about the way I filed things away during the week, about December and the pot roast and 3 hours around a table, about a woman with her sister's eyes who sat on my back porch and asked how I was and actually wanted to know. "Yes," I said. It surprised me. A long pause on the line. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay. Diane, I'm going to mail you the letter," she said, "and I want you to read it before we talk again. A breath. And I want you to know, whatever it says, the last 8 months have been real. None of it was." "I know," I said. "I know it was real." The second letter arrived on a Thursday, shorter than the first. 1 page. Claire's same small, precise handwriting. It said, "Nathan, if you're reading this, then Diane did what I asked and it went the way I hoped, which means I still know you both better than you know yourselves. I'm going to ask you not to be angry with me for this one either, though I suspect the window for you being angry with me has probably closed by now. Here is what I know. You are going to be okay, not because time heals things. I always thought that was an incomplete thought, but because you know how to love people well. That's not a small thing, most people don't. Diane has been alone for a long time, longer than she admits. She is also the most stubborn woman I have ever known, which is saying something given that you married me. She will not do anything about any of this on her own. She'll talk herself out of it because she'll decide it isn't appropriate, or it isn't the right time, or some other sensible reason that is actually just fear dressed up in practical clothing. I am not asking you to do anything. I want to be very clear about that. I am only asking you to not close a door that doesn't need to be closed. You'll know which door. I love you. I loved you every day. I loved you in the good years and the hard years and the 14 months that were both at once. And because I love you, I want you to have the rest of the story. You deserve it. You both do. All my love, always. Claire. I called Diane on a Tuesday, not because it was Tuesday, because I'd been holding the letter for 4 days and I knew what I needed to say, and I decided that some things shouldn't wait for the right day of the week. She picked up on the second ring. "Hi," she said. "Hi," I said. Silence. The kind that has a shape to it. "You read it," she said. I read it. And? I looked out at the back porch. The 2 chairs, the mountains doing their enormous indifferent thing in the morning light. "She said she wanted you to come back to Asheville," I said. "The letter." She said, and I want to be accurate here because she was very specific. She said she wanted you to see the porch in the spring because the view is different in the spring and she never got to show it to you. "Quiet on the line?" "She said that?" Diane asked, softly. "More or less," I said. "Nathan?" "I'm not asking you for anything," I said. "I want to be clear about that. I'm only asking you not to close a door that doesn't need to be closed." I paused. Those were her words, not mine, but I mean them too. The longest pause, and then, the spring view. When does it start? April, I said. The mountains are different in April. I could come in April, she said quietly. I'll have coffee ready, I said. She laughed, small and real, the same laugh from the kitchen 8 months ago that had cracked something open. Nathan, she said, yeah. She was something else, wasn't she? I looked at Claire's reading glasses. Still on the table? I hadn't moved them. But somewhere in the last few months, I'd stopped seeing them as a reminder of what was gone and started seeing them as what they actually were. A small, stubborn piece of her, still in the room. She really was, I said. I don't know what April looks like yet. I don't know what comes after April or what we call any of it, or whether we call it anything at all. Some things don't need names right away. Some things just need a door left open and two people willing to walk toward it at whatever pace is honest. What I know is this. My wife loved me enough to plan for my life after hers. She loved her sister enough to give her a reason to walk back into a world she'd been retreating from. And she loved them both enough to know that sometimes the people who need each other most are the ones who would never find each other on their own. She always was the one who remembered everything. She remembered us even on the way out. And if that's not love, the real kind, the kind that makes plans and writes letters and trusts the people it's leaving behind to be brave enough to keep going, then I don't know what love is. But I think I do. I think I've always known. If you made it to the end of this one, thank you, genuinely. Hit like and subscribe if this story stayed with you. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had someone love you so well that you felt it even after they were gone? Or maybe tell me where you're watching from and how old you are. I read every comment. Every single one. Drop it below. I'll be down there.